lovely for having gone back to work today.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you for joining. Thanks for being on Make It Make Sense. This is just a project that I've been working on where I really try very hard to make sense of the world that most of the time makes no sense whatsoever. So I appreciate you being here to try to help me do that. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? What's your story?
Well, first, thanks for having me. My full name is Stephanie Faulkner. I teach eighth grade math, seventh grade pre-AP, and eighth grade math. This is my 16th year teaching, my 16th year in Fort Worth ISD. I've only taught two grades, well, two different schools. I did fifth grade for 8 years, and now seventh and eighth for 8 years.
Which do you like
I have
better? They're sweeter
that's
in fifth grade, right?
They are a lot sweeter in fifth grade. A
Yeah.
lot sweeter in fifth grade.
Yeah.
Eighth grade is that transition where they're trying to figure out, who they are. And I'm at an all boys school, so it's also the whole testosterone and who's the bigger and
Oh,
stronger. Yeah, fifth grade was a lot sweeter, but I like eighth grade content, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, it
So,
does, totally does. Sorry,
yeah.
you were telling us about your offspring.
Yes, my son, my baby, he's 9. He'll be 10 in about a week and a half. And yeah, that's my baby. He keeps me on my toes too. That he's the boy. And
Well, you're learning all the stuff though for
yeah,
like his
yeah. Oh
upcoming
yeah.
year.
10 steps ahead of the game.
Yeah. So, and it's like a whole other language you have to speak to communicate with children that age. So I'm sure you're up on
Absolutely.
all of that.
Absolutely. I ask my students all the time, I'm like, hey, so what does this mean?
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to him and I'll say it to him. And he'll be like, Mom, do you know what that is? And I'm like, yep, I do.
Yeah. Seriously. I am not proud of how much I have urban dictionary things people to try to keep up with whatever my kids are saying. So
Yeah.
they're not very gracious about telling me what the language is. So I just take to the internet to try to figure it out on my.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But anyway, well, I so appreciate you being here, and you're a teacher, which means you went back to school today after the Christmas break, which I mean, how much did you work on your Christmas break, honestly? Because probably all the time, right?
Well, normally I do. Normally I am probably the whole break trying to reconfigure everything that didn't go right the first semester and find the kids I need to really focus on the next semester. But I was sick, like
Yes, you were.
couldn't get out of bed, couldn't do
Uh,
anything, couldn't function, sick for like 10 days.
oh,
So
honey.
that's why today when I went back, I was there pretty much the whole time because I had so much to try to get in. So,
Yeah,
and I do some more stuff here in a little bit.
yeah.
But
Well,
yes,
such is
normally
the life of a teacher. Like, I feel
yeah,
like you never really get breaks off. So I'm not surprised to hear that, but maybe God was forcing you to take a little rest with
yeah,
whatever this illness was. But there's some nasty stuff going around. So I'm glad to hear that you're on the mend or that you're feeling.
yes. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about teaching because I will tell you. So you and I came together several years ago because you are part of what I teachers I've always felt like are grossly underpaid. I think that was definitely brought to light during COVID for myself because I only had the kids home for a few months with homeschooling, but I do not have your gene. I am not cut out for any of that. And so I've never appreciated our teachers more than after COVID because to deal with a classroom full of that and let that be like your heart and your joy is like takes a special kind of person. But I've always felt that teachers were underpaid for like raising our kids, which you guys absolutely do. And so we need to be more grateful. But the sad thing is in Texas, the reason I have so many teachers in my life is because your insurance is really expensive. And so people come out and try to look for outside insurance so that they don't have to take what the district is offering. And so that's when you and I came together, is because the first big topic is why are y'all so underpaid? And I'm sure this is not going to be any earth-shattering, light-giving like idea here, but realistically, you guys are 26 0.4% teachers are paid less than other similarly educated professionals, which is crazy to me. Like, I don't understand how we got here. And, you know, there's such a mass exodus right now of teachers like leaving the profession, and the pay compensation is the number one cited reason. So
Yeah.
talk to me about what you've seen, because you have to have seen so many of your homies like leaving the profession, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as far as why, I honestly don't know, other than like the state funding part of it and, all of that. But at the end of the day, definitely underpaid for the hours and the time, and our own expenses that we put into it.
Totally.
And not only that, but you're not paying us, but then they're requiring more and more from us every year as far as time constraints and meetings and trainings, and go here and do this and document this 17 times and show up here 22 times. But our pay isn't going anywhere. We're doing all this extra work, putting in all this extra time and effort, and it is burnout.
Yeah.
It really is. It's burnout. And I say every year, and I feel like every year it happens a little bit earlier. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired. And it's not the kids, because I do have that, whatever that gene or that bug is. I love teaching. I
Yeah.
love teaching. I love the classroom. I love the aha moments that my kids have. I love the aha moments that I have as an educator, where I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what I got to do. This is what I have to, I love that.
Yeah.
But everything outside of that is why educators are leaving. And we don't get paid enough for what they're asking us to do.
Yeah. And
And a
you've been
lot
at
of
it
it,
for a long time. So
yeah.
like, do you feel like, because the pay is just kind of leveled off, or they'll kind of cheat you, like they'll give you an increase, but then your insurance will go up, right? Like
Yeah.
there's always something that you guys are always kind of getting the short end of the stick. Do you feel like since teaching hasn't stayed competitive in the compensation, that you see like a less skilled teacher coming into the classroom?
Absolutely, especially with a lot of these new schools that are coming up, these charter schools that are opening, where their starting pay may be higher than the district starting pay. They'll all the good teachers will go over there. And I know one of the guys personally that started one of the rocket ship, and he went and handpicked a lot of the best teachers, from certain districts for that reason, because he knew he could pay them more. He knew
Yeah.
he could offer them more. And it's a brand new school, brand new system. Why not? Um, and then I've been scared myself just to leave my district. Like I said, I've been in my district 16 years. I don't know. I guess it is fear, like I
Yeah.
don't know what else is out there. It's gonna stay where I know what it is. But a lot of districts have been trying to like level with each other, but nobody really saying, hey, we're going to pay the teachers what they're worth. This is,
Totally.
this is it, and making teachers go there, except for a lot of these, like I said, the charter schools and the
Yeah.
private schools.
So if your school, so how many like head count is your school understaffed like right now currently?
Um, so my school is probably a small, I'm 6 through 12. And I am the only seventh grade pre-AP, eighth grade math teacher. Other schools usually have like 2 or 3 because their numbers are so high. But our school is relatively small. It's a school of choice, which that's a whole nother. You can ask me about that next. um, but we, even with us being small, we're probably missing 3 right now.
And
And
so
it's
that just means the
in
whole,
crucial subjects. Like that's
yeah,
not like,
so everybody has to pick up that course load, right? I mean,
yeah,
do you have more students or do you have more work to do, or both?
a little bit of both. Um, we had another, for example, so we had a teacher who was out for 8, 9 weeks in the beginning of the school year. And so we were helping out with the subs that were in there, helping with those kiddos, watching those kiddos. Now we're planning Saturday camps that we're going to be working and, you know what I'm saying, trying to help with those kids, just to keep them where they're supposed to be, because we were without a teacher for so long.
Right.
So yeah, and the teachers that we're missing now, they're core subjects, core high school subjects too, that have to take the EOC. So those kids are behind. And so we're gonna have to, you know, start figuring out a plan of action for them as well.
Well, you know, so we're in a district that just this year
Mhm.
went to 4-day school weeks. So
Okay.
it was their attempt to entice teachers to come to teach it, you know, in this district. Now, and this is just from like completely from the parent side of things, so I can only imagine from the teacher side of things. But like, I didn't realize until like we moved to this schedule how by the time Friday came, we were really running on fumes. Like just getting everyone to practices and up for class, and I've got 2 different start times, and everybody's got to have breakfast and lunch and all this stuff out the door, and it's just like a lot of chaos to get to kids where they need to be. And I realize now that we were running on fumes by the time Friday rolled around, and so I'm so grateful for this new schedule.
Mhm.
But I can only imagine, because your days are, you know, what, probably like 7 to 5 normally. Like that's you're probably how much you're in the school, right? So like I can't even imagine. And then coming home and having an adolescent boy that you have to, you know, be his mom when you clock out. Like it's just so much. So I just
Yeah.
can't even imagine where you pull that from, because there's no reprieve.
Yeah. And a lot of us have like side jobs or like part-time jobs in
Right.
addition. I mean, I have two,
Yeah.
you know, that I do as well. So I have very early mornings and very late nights, because that time when I come home, I do try to spend with my child while he's awake,
Yeah.
um, and not take away from him, and be actively engaged in going to his practice and, you know, doing all that. So
Wow. Now, how much do you think you spend on average out of pocket on your classroom? Because I know this is another like hot button issue.
yeah, I'm a lot. I'm that teacher. If my kids are hungry, they know where to come.
Mhm.
If you know they're having a bad day and they need to have a woosah moment, they know where to come.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of things that, you know, that are not even education related, that I buy and pay for my kiddos, just for their, you know, their just
Mental
basic needs.
mental health.
Yeah, mental health, basic needs, you know, things like that. As far as materials, I pay for an online program out of pocket, because we can't fund it. And I use it for my kids who are struggling, my low performing kids, to give them that extra enforcement, another resource to use. Other than that, constantly pencils, notebooks, journals, you know, things like that. So
Never ending. You just
yeah.
don't keep track of it
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
wow. Well, okay. So talk to me. So COVID had to be, I mean, it rocked all of our worlds, but like, how did it change your job? Because I feel like it was like, how long did you guys, were you off grid? How long did you like teach virtually? Like, what did it look like? And what did it look like to go back and have so many less people there?
Um, I didn't realize the effects of COVID until maybe about 2 months after we did go back, and it really hit me. I think I was depressed. Um, because teaching just, and like I said, I love my job. I love teaching. So teaching wasn't the same. Like, you don't get to interact with the kiddos. You don't get to know them and, you know, really have that interaction and be able to sit there and help them. And I teach math, so it's very pencil and paper. You gotta, nope,
Uh,
that's not it. Erase that, do it again. Don't come up, put that over there. You know, so it's very hands-on. And I didn't get that. And so it was just, I was talking to a screen. And it wasn't the interaction and the relationship building that's so important in the classroom wasn't happening. And so when we got back, it took a while, on both ends, the kids and, the staff to like fall back into the norm of things because we had got so used to that social distance
Yeah.
that it was like, hey, no, it's okay, for me to come over here and talk to you now. It's okay for us to interact. It's okay if you had a bad day, give me a hug. Let's go. Let's shake it off. Let's, push through. Like, so it took a while. And when it finally started to like unravel and get back to normal, I was like, gosh, I was in a funk for a really long time. And I don't think I realized I was in it until I came out of it and was
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay, this is,
Yeah.
um, but it was definitely different. And coming back and not having all the kids there, it was tough. Um, and like I said, on both sides for the kids too. It was a real adjustment for them coming back and a lot of conversations that had to be had just about life, not about school
Mhm.
and math, just about life in general. So
Were you worried for your health during that time?
um I was, and then I'll double back and say that I was, but it was more so for my son because I didn't want to get anything to give to him, and
Right.
I didn't want him to get anything because he has allergy induced asthma, and
Yeah.
he's got a lot of breathing issues already, and we've been to ER several times in the past because of his oxygen levels. So I was just like, oh my God, if my kid gets COVID,
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't, God forbid, anything would happen to my baby. So I was worried about me, but I was more so worried about how it was going to affect him or his great grandmother who we were around all the time, who was 90, and like,
Sure.
gosh, we can't go see family anymore. We can't, do anything because we don't want to get anybody sick.
Right. Did you ever have COVID?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I felt like I did. I lost my smell, my all the symptoms, but I tested negative 3 times.
Isn't that
So
weird?
yes, and I believe my son actually may have had it the January before COVID really hit.
Yeah.
Because we were in the hospital and his oxygen levels were low and he was coughing like crazy and he didn't feel well and he tested negative for flu and everything
Yeah.
else. And they had to just, put him on the oxygen machines and give him all this stuff. And 2 months later, COVID came out. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm pretty sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been here for a little bit longer. But yeah, so I don't know. I've been sick a few times, and even this go round, I went 2 different times, tested negative for everything until finally they were like, oh yeah, well now it's in your lungs. Now you have pneumonia. But we're like,
Oh,
where'd that come from? So
goodness. Well,
yeah.
yeah. So when you came back from COVID, when we all came back to school, did you have a big chunk of people that were gone at the return?
In the beginning, because we rolled it out where it was kind of an option to where you could come back or you can remain virtual. And they tried that until they realized that that's just not feasible
Yeah.
in terms of time with us. Like you can't expect us to teach in class and virtual at the same time.
Right.
So then that went away, and then eventually the kids kind of trickled back in once we took that away.
Did you go back as soon as you could, like in
Yeah, I
person?
did.
Yeah.
I did. I wanted to. Like I said, I missed the classroom. I
Yeah.
missed being around the kids and the interaction and you
Yeah.
know, so
Got it. So as hard as it there, I mean, there's so many parts of your job that again, I'm grateful for the people who are called to do that. I try to think through like what our teachers go through, just like in dealing with my own children. And I feel like there is a tendency now because we like cater to our children so much that there's this tendency to take the side of our kids where when I grew up, I'm sure when you grew up, like that was not the case. Like my parents were so believing the teacher before they believed what I had to say, but that's not really the case anymore. And
Mhm.
do you feel that? Do you feel like
Oh
you're
yeah.
at war with some of these parents because how overindulged our kids are?
Oh, absolutely. I live by the process, the motto of document everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, I document everything and I keep my receipts
Yeah.
because that's the only thing now. And even then, they'll still be like, "Well, I still don't believe it." And I'm like, "Ma'am, this is right here. This is, signed by him and me. Here's this, boom, boom, boom." And you'll still get some that are still like, "No, I don't believe it."
Does the
So
school, the administrators, do they have your back in these instances?
they will. I've been really blessed with an administrator who does, have my back on things. We do butt heads on some things like the grades. That I think for me, that's where the most entitlement comes. They just feel like they should pass, even if they're not doing the work that says that they pass. And I have had to bump heads a few times with my admin behind that because I'm not going to just give you a grade just because you feel like you deserve a 70 and but you haven't turned in any of my work. So that's one of the things. And parents feel, oh, my kid should have an A. Well, your kid has an 87. Your
Yeah.
kid is more than welcome to come in and retake something and see if we can do something. But if there's not that effort there, you can't do it. Just your son has to come do it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's for me where the entitlement comes in a lot is in the grades. Behavior, thank goodness, I don't really have a lot of behavior issues. My kids might actually like me.
Of course they do.
uh,
That part I believe. But still,
yeah,
they've all got phones. They have computers in their pocket. Like I can't even imagine trying to keep their attention or keep them from cheating all the time. Like
mhm.
how do you even manage this? Honestly.
It's a lot of monitoring. It's a lot of classroom policies and procedures being constantly reinforced, um, and setting the expectation and not lowering it for them. And I don't. And I tell them you can call your mom and dad and get your phone out because they can't have their phones otherwise. I'm like, you can get it out right now. You can call whoever, but we're not doing this. We're here for a reason, and they understand, like, because they know all teachers say this, but are you really going to hold me accountable to it? Are you really going to enforce this day in and day out in this classroom? Because a lot of teachers will start out with it and they'll, 2, 3 days, 4 days, they'll start letting little things slide. And the minute you do that, the kids know they got you.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's downhill from there. And I don't. I'm a stickler for it. I set that bar high, and I'm going to keep you there uh, all year.
Good for you though. I bet it shows up in your parenting too, because you really are like he's not going to get away with anything. Like you've got his number before he's even thought of what he was going to do next. You've already got it solved. So, but I imagine that because he's a boy and he's at that age, and I bet all that kind of shows up. I mean, and so how do
Yeah.
you manage? Because some they get laptops like they're supposed to be on computers, and technology is supposed to be part of their curriculum. But how do you
Mhm.
manage all this other stuff? Because they either have a phone or they have a watch or they have something, an iPad, something where they can be up to mischief. Like I just can't. And here's what's shocking. So there's a I was watching a political show real time with Bill Maher recently, and I was dumbfounded because he showed all of these videos that I guess the internet is chock full of these videos where students are assaulting administrators and teachers over whatever technology. And your boys are kind of at that age where they've got all the hormones raging, and they're a lot of them are bigger than the adults, and like they can kind of go rogue. Like I was shocked at how much this happens. I don't know if you've ever had an experience of it happening. But it's wild to me, and it seems like it's pretty prevalent. It's kind of the norm.
It is. And a lot of that goes back to the parents part of it too, where, there's no consequences at home, or if, they're entitled to act this way and they know their parents aren't really going to do anything, you'd be surprised. You'd be like, oh, I bet you wouldn't talk like that in front of your mom. And then you hear how they talk in front of their mom, and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe you would talk like that in front of your
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really is. And again, I don't, knock on wood here, but I don't have behavior issues. So to address the first thing with the technology in the classroom, when they are on it in my classroom, the programs have monitoring systems. So like it lets me know if they're actually working, if they're, if they've gone idle,
Mhm.
if they're not even logged in,
That's helpful.
and for how long. So it'll be like, oh, little Jimmy's been idle for 2 minutes. And I'm like, Jimmy, what you doing over there? Huh? Oh, nothing. And he'll get back. And I'll see it go back green to show,
Right.
okay, yeah, you were doing something else that you weren't supposed to. And then a lot of it, I sit with them. I go sit at their tables. I sit right in the way my classroom is set up. There's one spot in the room where I can see all of their screens from where I'm sitting. But I get out there and I sit with them, and I'll hop from table to table and keep my computer with me so I can see what they're doing and monitor. And I try to make it fun. I set goals for them, like, hey, this is what we're working on. If everybody gets here by, such and such date, then Friday we got X, Y, and Z. So they're all holding each other accountable as well. Hey, come on now, so you pay attention, falling behind. So that's that. With the kids going rampant and just losing it,
Ah, terrifying.
it is. And it's a lot of, I don't know if it's a lot of what's going on in the world that's just carrying over, because that is a lot of what I see in my district, in my school. These kids have so much pressure on them outside of school that sometimes inside of school is the only place they feel dominant, or maybe even in control, because they're not. Um, so they're kind of different kids. And when you really kind of get to talking to them and figuring things out, you'd be surprised how many of them that's really not even who they are. There was a reason, there was something that led to that could have been, you know what I'm saying, handled better if somebody would have said something or noticed or had a conversation, but they didn't. And so the kid spirals. And a lot of that, it's the mental health. It's just where our society and our world is right now. These kids are not okay. They're really not. And that's the sad part about it, is that our kids deal with so much outside of our classroom that if you come into the classroom and you don't address that, or you don't acknowledge that, everything else you're saying is falling on deaf ears, because they're thinking about what happened over here. They can't get to where you're at. And if you come at them with aggression or anger, or try to put a hammer down on them about this that they can't even focus on, they're losing it.
Have you had any instances like that where people were attacked at your school?
I was in the classroom. This was this year. Sorry, my shortness of breath is still there.
Oh no, apologize.
And I'm teaching, great lesson. I'm real proud about my lesson. And it was so funny because I heard all this commotion in the hallway in this deep voice, and he's cussing and threatening, and I'm gonna do this to you, and da 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 da, calling her out her name. And I hear my teacher going back with him, and I'm thinking, this is a grown man. Like, what is going on out here? So I'm like taking my keys off. I'm preparing to go help my friend out here. Like, what is going on? And I open the door, and it is the smallest, itty bitty tiny sixth grader you've ever seen in your life.
Oh my.
And I was like, what in the world? And he's still going. He brushed past her and shouldered her, and she kind of went into the wall a little. She's a little older. And I'm like, what? Like, I literally thought it was a grown man. The
Yeah.
way he was talking and the tone of his voice, I thought it was a grown up. And so it was this little bitty sixth grader. And come to find out, long story short, I guess they had been having some issues for a couple of weeks, going back and forth. And on that particular day, he had some stuff at home, some
Mhm.
family stuff, and she said the wrong thing at the wrong time, and he lost it. So,
Did he get
but
expelled or
he
what
is a
happened?
troubled kid, though. Don't get me wrong. He is a troubled kid. He does have a history of some things going on and some anger issues, but he hasn't got help. And at the end of the day, that's where, okay, so if he has this trail of stuff, what are we doing? If we
Right.
know this about him, what are we doing? Why aren't we getting him help? Like, we as a district, as a school, there are so many resources we should have. Why aren't we doing something for him? Because
Yeah.
if this goes left and something tragic happens, then that falls on us, to me, because we know about
Yeah.
this and we're not doing anything to
And because
help.
Stephanie documented everything. So we know how many times it happened. We know everything.
Everything, everything.
So did he get expelled?
He did not. He was in school the next day.
Was the
Um,
teacher in on that decision or did she?
I think she was not happy about it.
Yeah.
Um, a couple days after that, he stormed out of her classroom again and left the school. They sent a security guard after him to find him. They brought him back. They put him in-house for the rest of the week. Um, he came and sat in my room instead of going to her class that week. He came back, and just to kind of give them that separation, because she's the only teacher at that grade level. Um, and I mean, and he was fine. He talked about it. He said he was sorry. And I mean, so when that was the week before the break. So we'll see what happens
Yeah.
coming back.
So would you do it again? Would you go teach and take this path again, the way things are today?
I never intended to be a teacher in the first place. Um, it really just fell on me, literally, like just fell in my lap all in one day. Hey, show up for interview, show up for the interview. Hey, we want to hire you. And I'm like, I have no resume. I didn't have a teacher certification. My degree's not in education. Like, it just, um, yeah,
But that was 16 years ago. So
it
that was
was 16 years
a
ago.
long time
Would
ago.
I start now, like
Yeah.
today, knowing what it is? Probably not.
Yeah.
Um, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably look into something else.
Yeah. I mean,
But
it's hard to scratch that itch because you do. So just knowing what I know about you, you would probably be good at whatever you decided to do. So this just happened to be the thing. But I do
mhm,
think you have a passion for teaching, and that's hard to find the role where you can instruct if that's really, and you seem to have really these kids best interests at heart, like so some of that would probably be missing in your next corporate America job. But I do understand where it would be really challenging, like young teaching used to be the profession. Like I can't think of
mhm.
how many girls I graduated with that were like, I'm gonna go be a teacher. And I knew I didn't have the genes, so I never uttered those words. Like that was never part of my story. But I it was the thing to do. And now I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's that many. I mean, because of like not just the ones that are not going into the profession, but how many are actually leaving the profession because of all of these things we're talking about, the aggression of children. And I mean, we feel stressed all the time. Like that's no different. These kids, it's trickling to them and that's showing up in your classroom. So that's a complexity. Technology is a complexity. Their smart mouths and how much we're taught to like speak our minds, whether or not we should, their lack of respect for adults and authority figures. Plus, I don't know what the hell we're feeding these kids, but they're all bigger. Like they're just bigger people, right?
They
And
are.
you're tall, but like
Mhm.
some of those kids are probably still taller than you and they're in 8th grade. It's pretty crazy.
They can't wait. They walk by me all the time like,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm coming for you.
"Go
Yeah.
away, go
I'm
away."
but I'm telling you, and I don't know what we're feeding them, but they're larger people. I mean, even that little 6th grader who sounded like a grown man, it's because we've injected his foods with all kinds of hormones and he is bigger and his
Yeah.
voice is deeper and like all of that. So I just can't, like if someone came to you and asked you that question, like a young girl who's just about to graduate from college and said, I want you to be my mentor, would you do it? Would do you think you could sell the profession and make her want to do it at this point?
I'm actually somebody's mentor right now. And I worked with her during summer school, and then she graduated um, that I think in August. And she said, I want to get into teaching. She was like, will you, be my mentor? And I told her yes. Um, I told her everything I was going to tell her was probably going to be against the grain as far as what she's learned and what she's been taught,
Yeah.
because that only works in the perfect world, and this is not it.
Yeah.
So I was very transparent with her about what she was walking into in terms of the kids, the workload, administration, um, just what it is to really be a teacher in 2023, 2024.
Yeah.
And so she's been very thankful about it because she was just like, yeah, she was like, that definitely is not the picture that's painted for you in my classes and in, all these trainings that we go to. That's not it. And so she's actually the first person that I've agreed to mentor in all these years.
Why have you turned it down? I'm sure people have approached you.
Just responsibility. I have so much. I do so much. I tutor, I coach my son. Like I said, I've got 2 other little side time jobs that I do as well. I just didn't want to take on any more responsibility. But I don't know what it was about her this summer. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh no, I gotta help her.
Yeah.
She needs a little truth coming into her life right now, walking into this. And
Well, she's still into it though, having heard all of that.
she starts this semester.
Okay.
So yeah, she got picked up at a school in my district. It's an elementary. Um, and so she went today. Today was her first day. And so we'll see. We sat and we talked on, was that Sunday, and I helped her a little bit with like how to structure her lessons and things like that. So she's excited. Um, but again, she's young, and I was excited, young too. Like you said, it's and then you get in there. So if you get in there and it's not what you expect it to be, that's where people and the disconnect comes. That's why I try to be very honest with her
Yeah, good for
out
you.
the gate. Like, know what this is that you're walking into is not what they painted for you over here in this classroom setting. So,
Well, because I mean, you want to show up excellent to everything that you do.
mhm.
And you really, because you have other little humans that you're in charge of for all of those hours of a day, you don't really have time to have an off day, which
Yeah.
is a whole other level of pressure. Like you can't just have a bad day and take it out on the kids. Like that doesn't work. You won't have a job for very long if that happens,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, I commend you for being honest with her. I think that my job, same thing, like lots of false promises and not really painting the real picture. And I'm like, look, it's a great job if you understand what you're signing up for, but I'm going to make sure you understand what you're signing up for because not is just a waste of your time and mine. So I think that honesty is, I'm sure she welcomes it. I think it's great. I think you should mentor more people, not that you have time, but yeah, I mean, I think, she's probably going to be that much further ahead. I've always looked at my job as a mentor as like, tell someone all the things that you wish someone had told you along the way that they didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Because people want to hold that stuff close to the vest, or when they figure it out, they don't want to like share the knowledge, which I think is so shameful.
Yeah.
But if
And
you,
I'll say I was blessed because I started out with really strong teachers around me that did give it to me straight and give it to me honest and laid it all out there and said, hey, this is what you need to do. The rest of this, don't worry about it. This is the bread and butter. This is what it is that you focus on. Don't let the rest stress you. This is how you do X, Y, and Z. This is how you approach X, you know what I mean? So I really did start out in a great situation. So anytime I can help somebody else within my school, I definitely do. That I couldn't do the mentor thing. But I am glad I helped her because she's a real sweet girl. And I
that's
think she's gonna do good. Yeah.
how many police officers are at your school?
We have one police officer that's there constantly, and then our campus security guard.
Do you think, because how much training goes into like active shooter now? Like so much?
In the beginning of the school year, we have one. I know they do it more so for like our campus security.
Mhm.
But honestly, we have
Really?
that one training and that's about it.
I just
Yeah.
can't even imagine how much training really would be required to deal with a situation like that. Like, I'm sure a lot of it's instinctual, but like so much of it, I feel like I would have to really have beat over my head. So I can't even imagine the pressure. Like, I think this when I drop the kids at school, I'm like, man, these kids have a police officer in their life every single day at their school. That was never part of my coming up,
Yeah.
and how different the world really is. And all of these active shootings happening in our backyard, like they
Backyard, yeah.
happen here because probably because of our looser gun laws, but it's
Mhm.
really kind of terrifying. And just back to all that we talked about earlier with the overly aggressive hormonal kind of adolescent, because the world is really tough on them and we don't have any idea what these kids go home to. So I
Yeah.
can only imagine, and I'm sure you get to scratch the surface a little bit and that's why you try to be the haven when they're at school, someplace that they can go. But I just can't imagine that level of pressure. Do y'all even do like tornado drills? Because that's what we did. Tornado drills. We drilled.
Yeah, we still do like our lockdown tornado, the basic drills like that. But it is a concern. Like I said, my school is small, but we're around the corner from another high school who they probably have 4 squad cars sitting out in front of their school at any given moment. So that means they have, at least 4, police in their school.
Yeah.
And several times we've had to go on lockdown because there's been a shooting in the area and the shooter is running on foot. So they don't know where he's at. So we go on lockdown. And a lot of things get brought up with that too, just about our school safety. We have so many doors that don't work, that are supposed to, lock and don't. We have a lot of safety issues that we bring up all the time. One of my teachers, her daughter is at a college that had 2 active shooters in the same year. And so she's like paranoid, behind that. And, again, so it's that mental health of everybody. If this is just a scary time, you never know. We've had several instances where our kids have been on social media saying they were going to come shoot up to school the next day. And, so we show up and it's a large police presence waiting on that kid to get to the school. And so, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. My son actually goes to the elementary where the cafeteria lady was shot. Did you hear about that in the news about a month or two
Mm-mm.
ago?
I don't watch the news because of
And
this.
it's a lot. And so I pulled up to drop him off, and as I pulled up, everything was blocked off and the tape was up, and it was just blowing my mind how many parents were still letting their kids get out the car and walk up the sidewalk to the school because they couldn't drive because it was cut. I was like, y'all not see the yellow tape? Like, we
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. Why are you letting your kids go? So I
Yeah.
U-turned. I took them to school with me. I'm not letting my kid walk up the street and there's police everywhere.
Ugh.
So that, that's a conversation I had to have with him, about what happened and, why this happened and how we're going to be safe and what happens if it happened while we were at school. And, so it's just different times. It's definitely different
Different
times.
time. Yeah, I mean, I would think there have probably been a lot of instances over the past couple of years where you've like thought twice about, what you're doing and where you're at. I would think that would be true of anyone. The
Mhm.
post-COVID, people don't seem to want to work as much. There definitely were lots of teachers. So I talked to them because they'd call me and they'd say, I'm leaving and I need to talk about health insurance. So I would hear how many were leaving teaching because it just became too much. The workload just increased exponentially. The pay did not match it. So like again, I'm super grateful. I take every chance I get. I'm sure that this happens. I have the middle schooler who's seventh grade, and he's not going to allow me to give. So you kind of get the short end of the stick in this case because he won't let me take his teacher's gifts because he's too cool for that now. But I'm like, every chance we get to like spoil, like whether it's teacher appreciation or Valentine's Day or whatever, Christmas, I like to just say another thank you to them because man, it's a job that I couldn't do. So I'm so
Yes,
grateful.
you do that even with us. Thank you.
Yes, of
Your
course, of
your
course.
gift cards, I love them. I always love getting your cards and your notes. I think it's amazing that you do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm so appreciative just of all of it, of everything you do. Um, thank you for taking this time with me. I know you haven't been feeling well, so I really do appreciate, and I know you've got two side hustles and a regular job. So I'm going to let you get back to all of it. But real quick before I let you go, one other question. If you were to give your younger self one piece of advice that maybe would have changed it all, and it can be about teaching, it doesn't have to be, what would be that piece of advice? What would you tell your younger self?
Um, don't hold yourself responsible for things you have no control over. For the longest time, I was one of those kids that kind of grew up in a not so good environment in home life, and I carried that. And that's not my responsibility. That's not, and I think a lot of kids do that. Um, and a lot of adults do it, it's just a lot of pressure and some things are out of your control. That's not your fault. It's not your baggage to carry. Put it down and keep going. Worry about
When did you learn this?
whew. um honestly in college, I was taking some psych classes. My sister, I don't know how I ended up in education.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be I wanted to work with kids. I did. I wanted to do like counseling or work with MHMR. Um, but yeah, I was taking these classes and I was just like, that sounds like me. Wait a minute, I do that. And so it was like this healing process that I was, going through taking these classes. And I was just like, put it down. Focus on what you can focus on, worry about what you have control over, and that's it.
That is brilliant advice. I still struggle with that. I want to fix everything and everyone,
Yeah,
and there's not enough hours in the day for that. So
yeah,
good for you. I think that's fantastic advice for your
yeah,
younger self. Although you've picked it up pretty young, so you've already been employing it. I think that's awesome.
yeah.
So, well, I appreciate you and your candid convo and spending this time with me. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, honey. Well, I will talk to
Okay.
you soon.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.